Welcome to the second part of Langchain and Gemini series. I'll recap what we did in the first part. We understood what Langchain is, what is Gemini, installed R packages, specified an optional encoding format, understood the functioning, storage, usage, creation of YAML files, how to import that file. That file will have your API key, your Google API key. You upload the file using this option. When you double click it after uploading, here you'll see what the key or what the file entails. It's a key value pair, it's a dictionary. This is your key, and on the right side is your Google API key. You've loaded all of these. You start to build the model, import whatever packages are needed, specify or state the model. We'll be using Gemini Pro, and then establish a fact, a prompt, invoke the chain, and generate a response. I'll spend some time here again. What we are doing in the first part, we're specifying that I'll give you the topic at runtime. Then we initiate a variable called prompt. So to us to create a template out of the string, and this creates a prompt template. Then I create a pipeline. This is the pipeline. We call this chain. This chain or our pipeline will help us send this prompt to our model. So imagine this pipe separator as an arrow. The prompt goes into the model and fetches a response. This is the entire pipeline, and this is how Langchain expression language also works. So it helps us to create dynamic prompts among other things. A description of it is listed here. We use Langchain expression language to do all this. And how do we call that chain? We say a chain.invoke and specify this topic at runtime. So we are at runtime and we specify it and say our topic for this exercise is cats. Now we'll also see what the prompt is, what is the model reading the prompt to be. So using prompt.format, I can see for different topics what is the model input. So this would help me see the model input. If I specify the topic as cats or dogs or let's say astrologers, anything, that will help simply create a statement in which the first part is constant. So you remember we specified the tell me a fun fact about this part. The string is the same. Just this topic in the last part updates as in when we update the topic. Let's clear out these. Okay. Now we'll move to the second part. The second part is about handling multiple responses. Handling multiple responses generating out of multiple topics. Okay. So how do I specify multiple topics? I define a dictionary. I say topics, a list. It's actually a list which has a dictionary inside. So I begin the list with this and I say one of my topics is cats. The other topic is dogs, and I'll encode all of these into quotes. Okay, so within a list you have these dictionaries wherein, let me close the bracket here as well and the bracket here as well. This is your dictionary 1 and the second entry of the list is another dictionary. You can also specify more topics. You can say same format topic, you say colon and astrology. Okay, so we specified 3 topics for our model. How do we get the responses? Let's say we create a list called responses. Earlier we used the function called chain.invoke. Now we'll use chain.map to generate the multiple responses and then say invoke. And what do we want to invoke a response about is this list that we just defined in the line above, that's called topics. Let's run both of these. Okay, so the cell has successfully run. I'll see what's inside these responses. In the last video, in part 1, we simply did a print on response.content. That means this particular variable response houses a lot more things than just content. And in this part, I'll be seeing what those things are. Now that we've generated or printed what responses as the variable has, let's also see the individual responses to each of our topics. So our three topics were cats, dogs, and astrology. So for response in responses, we'll print response.content. So we have a line about cats, we have a line about dogs, and this is the third one is about astrology. So we see that the model has successfully been able to produce a fun fact about each of these three topics. I also want to see each component of responses separately. Let me add a line above this and explore what responses contains. I see that there are three parts to this responses, each for cat, dog, and astrology. It begins by this word AI message. So this is one part. It says content cats. The second part is here, AI message dogs. And the third part is here, AI message astrology. So this responses element would have three parts. This list has three elements. How do you call the first element? You say response is 0. Responses 0 would give you everything that's there for cats. So this part, it should start at content cats have and it should end at cache read 0. That's what we have here.
Responses 0 has multiple elements. Now one is content, something which we actually already called. Then there is additional keyword arguments that's empty. Let's see what we have in response metadata. So let's say response underscore metadata. Let's run this. We see prompt feedback, finish reason, and safety ratings. Let's see what safety ratings is. The model gives us multiple safety ratings and specify 4 categories about regarding the safety ratings. The first category is harm category, sexually explicit. The second is harm category hate speech. Third is harassment. And fourth is dangerous content. So the model specifies if and to what extent your given prompt elicits a harmful or an unsafe response that can fall into each of these categories or any of these categories. So what our prompt has been, it's been give me a fun fact about cats. So it's saying that the safety ratings is telling us that is it sexually explicit? The probability is negligible. Then is it blocked? No. So had it been probability is high or something like that, then the response would have probably been blocked. So had we given a command or a prompt which would be inappropriate, then our model might have restricted it. So that brings AI ethics also into this model. Then second category is hate speech. Similarly, it says that probability is negligible and therefore it is not blocked. So it's understandable that telling a fun fact about cats does not relate to any hate speech. Similarly, it doesn't relate to harassment and neither is it any dangerous content. So we've explored what these safety ratings are. If you probably given some prompt, this I'll not be doing it here, but if you give some prompt which falls into either of these categories, then AI ethics might come in and block that response. After the metadata, we'll move to the next component. So we've seen block false. There's an ID component here. There is usage metadata. It says the number of input tokens you've used, the number of output tokens, and the total tokens, which would be sum of input and output. The input tokens, a brief introduction into tokens. Tokens are the smallest element that gets into the model. It's like the atom of the model. A token is typically composed of 4 to 5 alphabets. So you see that your prompt is very small. It says, tell me a fun fact about cats. So maybe the model is reading the input tokens as 8, whereas the output tokens are 45. So you would expect the response to be longer. Let's see what our cat response was. It was, cats have unique ability, this. So this entire thing until it. Now you can see it's a fairly longer response as compared to the length of your input. That's why you see the big difference between the number of input tokens and the output tokens. So tokens is essentially or is similar to the length of a single word. Not necessarily, but again, it's 4 to 5 characters or alphabets that are used and on which the model is trained upon. Your costing of the model also depends on the number of tokens you use. That's why token is an important concept to know about in these while you're doing while you're learning about LLMs or generative AI. For clarity, let's also call the next um, element in the list. So responses, list 1, this would be about dogs. Responses 0, this was about cats. Responses 1 would be about dogs. And similarly, everything would follow. You have this response, which you get. Now you see that the response is very small. So the input tokens is 8, as well as the output tokens is also closer. It's 13. The total tokens hence is 21. We see the response metadata. Let's see the safety ratings. Safety ratings is that the probability is negligible for all 4 categories. And similarly, the blocked variable or the blocked key is false for each of these. That means the prompt is safe. Hence, we've come to an end of this video. We've revised what we did in the first part. Then we further delved into handling multiple topics. We saw the responses variable. We saw what chain.invoke does, how to invoke chain for multiple topics, how to see each element, and what each element of this responses means. I hope you had fun learning this. I'll see you in the next one where we'll build further on this model. See you in the next one.